Hey there and welcome back. So I have to tell you this because it just shows how human we are and how we can make mistakes even with the best of intentions. So I was just doing some prep for our horse camp, which I had in my head as starting in 2 weeks. And I had it in my calendar as 2 weeks because I messed up the transferring from the form to my calendar and accidentally put it for the camp was in 2 weeks when in reality the camp is next week. And so my calendar next week was packed because I had our kids going to this other camp. So I was like, I'm going to fill my calendar and fill it because my kids are going to be at another camp. So I don't really have to worry about calls and stuff like that. And then as I was prepping to send out the email to those who signed up for our horse camp, I was like, oh my goodness, I totally messed up. And I put the wrong dates in my calendar. And thanks be to God, everything will work out. I have to change a few appointments and I already have, and it's fine. But I wanted to tell you this because a lot of people think that whenever you do this work, that this nervous system work, that you are growing in your capacity or expanding, that means perfection. And that doesn't mean perfection. All that it means is being able to laugh about it and hold it whenever you do mess up, because you're going to mess up. You're human. Okay. And so again, I just wanted to share that with you because real life, I messed up, but guess what? It's okay. It doesn't mean that I'm a bad or a failure or anything. It just means that I'm a human and I accidentally made a mistake, but that mistake isn't that big of a deal. Okay. So now, getting into today's episode. If you missed last week's episode, definitely go back and check it out because I talked all about the Given Leadership Conference. It was just so wonderful. And they did a concert by Sarah Kroger. And honestly, I don't really keep up with musicians very well, so I don't know who she is or anything really. But whenever I was there, her music was beautiful. And I almost didn't go because I was in such good conversation with two women. But finally, we were like, okay, we should go. So I was able to make it to the last 5 or 6 songs, and it was beautiful. Okay. Now, if you know who Sarah Kroger is, you're going to know this song. If you don't know who Sarah Kroger is, you're definitely going to want to listen to this song, and I'll link it below. Okay. Because this was one of the last songs that I heard. And while she was playing, she had videos of her on the beach and stuff like that. And so it was the ambience was just very calming. And so, but in this song specifically, she's saying about belovedness. Okay. And I cannot get this song out of my head, since that night. And this is something that I do personally struggle with, where again, I'm a human. I struggle with things like this, where I sometimes I'm why? Why am I get I am a lovable person, but I don't really feel like I am beloved. Okay. And so this song really struck a chord with me. And I'm assuming if I feel like this, then somebody listening, of the thousands of people who listen to this, will feel like this as well. Okay. And so I really want to go deep on this today because it's something that I've been ruminating on since the conference. And I literally wake up with this in my head. And I am playing it for my kids now and they're singing it. And it's just so good. And so I really wanted to go deep with this because this idea of belovedness is such an important part of our Christian faith, right? And so there's 3 different parts to this episode. Part 1 is going to be really about what belovedness actually means. Part 2 is going to be about what happens in your body when you don't own it, and you'll know what that means in a little bit. And then part 3 is going to be what does this look like practically in day to day, especially in business? Okay, because I know a lot of my clients are business owners, so I really want to touch on that. All right. So again, if you've been around here for a while, you know that I love etymology. If you don't know what that is, it just is the study of words, the history, linguistics, stuff like that. Okay. And so I wanted to dive a little bit into it. Now, again, I never took Latin, so I'm not very good at pronouncing these things, but I'm going to try my best. But the English word beloved comes from belufod, and it's rooted in Luthean, which is to love. Okay. But underneath of that, if you dig even deeper into the etymology, it's even more specific, essentially. And so the Latin word dialectus, which is the word used for beloved, comes from diligo, which means to deliberately choose, to single out, to set apart. Okay. To set apart with care and intention. So it's not affection in the way that we think of it. It's really about this choice, this choosing that costs something. Okay. And then you have probably heard of the Greek word agapetos, which is agape, which is, everybody thinks of it as love, but it's the love that gives without needing anything in return. Okay. So it's the friendship love. It's not the romantic type of love. And so this love, agape, is not triggered by the lovability of the object, but by the nature of the one who loves. Okay. So it's really less about you and it's more about the person who loves you. Okay. So when you think about that, like God does not love you because you are lovely, even though I'm sure you are. He loves you because so therefore he loves you, again, not because you are necessarily lovable, but because he is so loving. It's kind of like a weird thing to think about. But it's so cool though at the same time, because it really does like take the pressure off of like, I don't have to necessarily be lovable. Obviously we want to try our best, but it takes that pressure off of saying like that I have to earn this, that I have to be lovable, right? Because he's already saying, I love you, because he has chosen to love us in this way. Okay. And so the other way you can think about this too is that if we look at the Catechism of the Church, if you look at paragraph, what does my notes say? 356, it says that the human person is the only creature on earth that God has willed for its own sake. Again, God has willed for its own sake. And what does that mean? That essentially means that it's the only creature on earth that God has willed, not for its productivity or its usefulness, but just for its own sake. Okay. So your existence is like not a means to an end. Like you literally are the point. Okay. And when you can like really think about that, be like, you are the point of all of this. Like it's really humbling, but it's also really, really cool. Okay. And we can get into like the different saints with Saint JP2, where he spoke about this, like theology of the body is so beautiful, right? Where it's essentially like that argument that the personhood carries inherent inalienable dignity, not because of what you do, but because of just who you are, right? And like you are that mirror of God, that mirror of God's personhood, right? If you don't know what theology of the body is, definitely check it out. It's absolutely beautiful. The book is like ginormous, but it's, well, if you read the whole book, I'm sure you'll get it. Or you can read the condensed version like I did, and it's still beautiful. Okay. All right. And so then the other one that we have is Saint Therese of Lisieux, right? She's a doctor of the church, even though she like lived her whole life, I think it was 24 years in like a convent essentially. And like she was too small to climb the stairs of perfection, right? So she basically like said, Jesus needs to be my elevator, and like put my arms up and let God carry her up, right? So she she understood her belovedness is received, not achieved. And this is so hard for so many of us. And I'm going to get to why that is in part 2, but just hang with me here. Okay. One other thing that came up after the conference is I was listening actually on the way home to a podcast episode released by Tan Books. I should have written down who it's with. I think his name's Connor Gallagher, but don't quote me on that. And it's with Father Ripperger. And if you haven't listened to it, it's really, really good. They don't talk about like too much of the demonic and exorcisms and stuff like that. It's more like just theologically based. But again, it's really, really good. And they said something in there that I was like, whoa. Like I've never heard anybody say it in that way. And like, you know it, but when you know how whenever you hear something in a different way, it's like, whoa, this was like a whoa moment for me. And maybe it is for you too. Okay. And so hopefully I get this right, because I did not copy it down word for word. But essentially, like God permits demons to be involved in our lives. And this is like so humiliating to the demons themselves, because they are like, why should I have to be associated with these humans, right? Because they are now essentially, listen to this, they are now essentially being made servants of human sanctification. Like, what? And you might at first be like, Brigid, that doesn't make any sense. Like, how can demons be used for our sanctification? But if you think about it, all of these temptations, all of these things that we're going through are just stepping stones towards sanctification, right? Or not, but hopefully towards sanctification, right? And so the very creatures who have and continue to refuse to submit to God are actually being used to help us, God willing, become saints. Like, that's just wild, right? And so the enemy's involvement in your life is actually not evidence that God has abandoned you. It's evidence that God is so confident in you and your belovedness, and in his goodness, obviously, that he uses even the opposition, the evil one, to bring you back into his grace. And it's like, whoa. It just puts a different perspective on things. I don't know if that blew your mind, but it totally blew my mind. And I'm still thinking about it, because it's like every little temptation is like, this can either be used for my sanctification or it can be used for my downfall. And it's my choice. And it's a really hard choice sometimes. But now that I like see it like that, it's like, I can't unsee it, right? Okay. And so let's see. Okay. Now moving slightly a different direction, back to the concert, because I got a little bit sidetracked there. Whenever I personally encounter music, it like is one of my favorite forms of prayer. Some people, it really, really helps and supports. Other people, it doesn't. But again, specifically for me, I love music. Okay. And again, it just really helps me to like feel God's presence and to worship him. Okay. And there's neuroscience reasons behind this. And essentially it's that music activates multiple different regions of your brain simultaneously, right? In a way that just spoken language does not, okay? And so you have this auditory cortex, which is like part of the limbic system, which is not, I'm not going to get into it, but it's essentially, we always talk about the nervous system, but the limbic system is also a huge system as well, okay? And so the limbic system is where emotional memory and where those things are actually like experienced. Okay. And whenever you are listening to music, it releases those emotions, and they can either be good or bad. But if they're good, then they're going to release oxytocin and dopamine. And this is going to be like why whenever you are maybe driving and you hear a song and you instantly are like, I first heard this song right whenever I was driving in this spot. And like, this is when it was. Like, you have really intense emotional memories around music. And again, this is why, because it stimulates so many different parts of your brain. Okay. And so that is the same sort of thing that's happening here. Okay. And so like the church has always known this. And this is why we have part of the reason why we have like the sacred music, right? The Gregorian chants, because it's built on the idea that the body needs to participate in worship. The body needs to participate in worship. Even if you are not a great singer like me, we still need to participate in worship, not just our minds. Our minds, yes, are good to participate in worship, but again, God wants that whole piece of us, right? And it not just for God, but also again activates those parts in our brains that allow us to really use all of our different emotions, right? And so for me and so many, music is one of the best ways to find that calm and relaxation. Okay. So that's sort of like the background of why this is so important. And so whenever you listen to this song, again, if you don't know what it is, it starts out in a beautiful way where it's saying like, you own the lies, you own the failures, like you own everything that you see in the mirror. Like, we own that. And I think own is such an important word that she used there, because own is saying like, I'm taking ownership of this. Like, this is me. Right? Not like a different word of maybe like, you know that you've lied, you know that you whatever. Like that, it just has like a little bit of a different connotation. That own is such a strong word where it's like, you own the lies, you own the failures. And like, hello, totally, right? And so that's how the song starts out, is like, you own all of these negative things, but she literally says, it's time to own your belovedness. Okay. And so again, we already talked about what belovedness is. We talked about why music is so important. And now we're talking about that ownership. Okay. Because you can choose to own something, or you can choose to not own something. Like, think about a car or a house or whatever. You can either choose to own that thing, or you can choose to give it away, not accept it, whatever. Okay. And so what happens in your body when you don't own this belovedness, and again, I'm not perfect at this. This is still something that I struggle with, where I thought that I was good, but there's still many layers to the onion, right? And so when you do not own your belovedness, like, even if you logically want to, your body's like, no, it can't. That is, again, a wound, right? And if you've been around here, you've heard me talk about these. I have a premise of that there's 7 wounds that all stem from the opposites of the 7 deadly sins. And these wounds always start with a question about identity, right? And so it usually starts early, before the age of about 10-ish, before you have any sort of like idea of what's actually going on. Okay. And again, this doesn't mean that anybody in your life was bad or that it was traumatic or anything like that. It just means that maybe you had a parent who couldn't really show up in the way that you needed. And maybe they had no idea that they were doing that. And that's not their fault necessarily. It's just human, right? What about like, if you were in the classroom, like if you went to a school and somebody said like, what is that picture of? And you really internalize that of like, I can't be creative because I'm not good enough, right? Or maybe it's like you were overlooked. Or if you're in gym class and you're like always the last one to be picked. Little things like that can, not always, but can produce wounds that still are affecting you today. Okay. And so what your body does, because it doesn't have that logical thinking side going yet, because it's still very reactive in those early ages, your nervous system is going to draw takeaways from that. And it usually is always some sort of version of the same thing, where it's like, how do I boil this down? Essentially like, being myself is not received. Safety has to be earned. Being fully seen is risky. Things like that. Okay. And so your nervous system, again, which is so good, so beautiful, like so brilliantly, it's doing exactly what it's designed to do, but it's going to organize everything around protecting whatever conclusion you made. And it's not trying to harm you. It's not trying to cast blame upon anybody. It's just saying, I was always picked last. So therefore, I must not be good enough to play X. And again, that isn't necessarily true. Maybe it's just that there's like a weird bird outside my window. I don't know if you can hear that. Maybe it's just that the people picking didn't like you, which that gives you a different idea, right? And so it's just a matter of understanding where that comes from and healing that, okay? That is so loud. I don't know if you can hear that, but it's really loud. Okay, now that wound shapes, again, your operating system, your nervous system. And then that operating system is going to shape every single relationship that you go into in your life, because you cannot give from what you do not have, and you also cannot receive what your body has learned to be suspicious of. Okay, and so this is where that ownership can be so hard, because it's like you don't necessarily believe that you can own this thing. Just like if, say, Uncle Bob died and he had millions of dollars, and I'm using money just because it's very tangible. Not that it's good or bad, it just is very tangible so people can understand it. So Uncle Bob had millions of dollars. He had like 1,000 acres out west in Wyoming or something. And Uncle Bob gave it all to you. And you had no idea that this was coming, because Uncle Bob was just sort of this like distant kind of relative, and you were just like, you saw each other at Christmas, and Uncle Bob was always so nice and you really liked him, but it was sort of just like this passing relationship thing. But Uncle Bob died, and he gave everything to you. At first, you might be like, this is so cool. Like, I get to have a ranch in Montana and like can do whatever I want. And then after a while, you might be like, this is too much responsibility. Like, I do not want to have all of this. Why did he do this? Like, why did he give this all to me? This feels like so much work. But you don't know that Uncle Bob has a full trust set up so that you don't have to take care of anything. He has the lawns taken care of. The taxes are paid for the next like 1,000 years. Like, you do not, all you have to do is just come and like, if you want to come and like sit and enjoy the ranch. You don't have to do literally anything if you don't want to, but you don't know that. And then whenever somebody tells you that, it's like, okay, like I can just come and like use this whenever I want to. Well, not whenever I want, but you know what I mean? Like I can use this gift. That's sort of the same thing that God gives us, where it's like, he has this whole beautiful paradise for us. And so many of us are like, this is too much. Like I have to work so hard in order to earn this. And I'm speaking to myself here. Like I have to work so hard to earn this. Like it's not possible. I can't do this. Like why would he give me this much responsibility? And God's over there like Brigid, just chill. Like I already have everything taken care of. You just have to come and like sit in this beautiful garden that I created for you. But it's so hard to own that because it's like, but it feels like too much. So therefore I don't want to own that because it feels like so much work. Right. And so that's sort of the system that so many of us are operating from. And some of us are more healed than others, because again, this is not like a one and done. This is like a continuous thing where it's like you heal and then you feel great. And then it's like, this thing came up. Like I thought it was good. And then it's like, okay, you got past that and you're good. And it's like, this thing came up. And it's not this like one and done. It's this ever incremental, slow steps towards heaven, right? And God's there to help us move faster. But he still wants us to do the work, okay? And so whenever a woman has not owned her belovedness, again, owned her belovedness, not that she has to do anything, it's already inside of her, it's already inside of you. But whenever you have not owned that, it will often have one of two different postures in a relationship. You're either going to overgive, like just so much giving, like you're just going to pour out of yourself, which is beautiful and can be rightly ordered, but it can also be incorrectly ordered. Okay. Because if you're doing it from a place of like, this is truly like life-giving for me, then that's rightly ordered. But if you're doing it from a place of like, if I don't overgive and be that people pleaser, then that means that like I'm useless, that in this relationship, I am not worthy. That is disordered. Okay. So that's the first posture, is if you're overgiving. The second is that if you are always saying yes. Okay. So again, similar, but like slightly different. This one never asks for what you actually need. You would rather exhaust yourself versus like feel the discomfort of saying, no, I don't want to do this. And again, neither of these are bad. We just need to make sure that we're doing these things from a rightly ordered place. Okay. The other way that this shows up is like not trusting people. This is what I struggle with. And you kind of keep everybody at a distance. Okay. And so those are like two of the big ways that I see, right? So overgiving, that people pleaser, that like never wanting to say no, or not trusting people, kind of like loving people, but not allowing them to see your true self. Okay. Both of them, again, can be protective, which I actually sent out an email about this a little while ago, where I was on a podcast with this man. I had only met him once before, and halfway through, or maybe not halfway through, I don't know. however long through. He stops and he goes, "You seem kind of like I forget the exact word he used. He's Danish or something. So he said some foreign word, which basically means like aloof or like indifferent. And at first I was really taken aback and I was like, I don't think that I'm being indifferent or like cold or anything like that. But then as I was pondering it, I was like, you know what? Me being like this is actually probably some sort of safety mechanism that I learned because I had not known if he was safe enough to open up to. And that was just, again, not that he was bad or anything. Like I'd willingly gone on the podcast, but I didn't know him. So therefore, I did not feel comfortable being my true self. And then at the end of the episode, he was like, you know what? This was actually a really great episode. Like, you're really easy to chat with, like, really good interview. Like, it was great. So I tell you that because that was a rightly ordered time when my body was saying, we're still feeling him out. We're not sure if we can trust him yet, right? And then when I learned like, okay, I can trust him, then I was able to be my true self. So I don't want to ever say that these are like good or bad. There's not black and white. But again, we have to make sure that they are rightly ordered and that we're understanding where they're coming from. Okay. All right. Now, whenever you really start to understand that only love, Christ's love, Jesus's love can actually heal you, and then you can start to own your belovedness, like that is literally the only thing. Because he cannot love you any more than like fire cannot be hot, right? Fire, in order to be fire, fire has to be hot. And God cannot love you any more than he is right now. Okay. But the love is not responsive to your behavior, right? That love comes before anything that you do. And so when you start to really understand that like God loves you, not what you do, but he just loves you, and you really start to feel that, that's when you can start to feel safe and seen by God the Father, and then everybody else as well, okay? And one thing in that song that said is, he smiled when he made you. And just like let that settle in for a minute. He smiled when he made you. Like, can you just imagine how beautiful that is? Okay? Like God literally smiled when he created you because he was so proud of you. Not because you had done literally anything, but because of you. And I know you might be saying like, well, why did he make me? Because that's what I struggle with too sometimes. And it's just a matter of, unless he comes down and tells you, right now it's just a matter of choosing to know that he made you because he wanted you. And that has to be enough right now. Again, unless he's able to speak to you and you get a better answer. But for right now, he wanted you, and therefore he made you. And therefore you need to own that you are beloved. Because when you can do that, that posture is going to change everything. Okay. Now, I briefly touched on what this looks like from a practical sense, like what this looks like in your day-to-day life, but I want to go a little bit deeper with that because again, I work with women who are building beautiful businesses and doing it in a really like aligned way most of the time, but still struggling a little bit. And it shows up in ways that you might not even realize. Okay. But essentially, I don't know if you've heard this or not, but building a business is like personal development on steroids because your business becomes a magnifying glass for everything that you're going through. It doesn't matter how small or how big your business is. It's literally going to show every single quote unquote weakness that you have. They're not really weaknesses. They're just protection mechanisms. Okay. So let's think about these things. Pricing. Here, I work with clients all the time on pricing. Rewriting your offer because you think it's not good enough. Knowing that you are actually good at what you do and believing that and charging that much, right? Okay. And those are just some of the big things that I see. So again, pricing, fiddling with things that don't really matter, and that believing that you are actually good enough at this. Okay. And those show up in different ways. So pricing is kind of obvious where it's like you probably undercharge. Fiddling is like that you don't want to be seen. And then knowing that your work is actually worth it is saying like, these are gifts that God has given me. And I'm using them for his glory and I can help you. So just being bold with that. All right. But so many women really, really struggle with it, with all of those things. And it's because of these wounds, right? It's because that idea of belovedness is still sort of not truly owned, right? So like if that's you right now, even if you don't necessarily have a business but you're still just struggling with this idea of like, I have to earn my worth, and it has not been owned because you think that you still have to earn it. Okay. So you're still trying to get approval. You're still trying to appease everybody. You're still not actually being bold. You're just sort of like placating people, right? Versus whenever you can start to own this belovedness and heal those wounds, then you can start to really say, this is what I can do for you. Do you want this help? And they might say no. And you say, okay, no worries. You don't take offense. You just say, be praying for you. If you ever need help, I'm here. If not, awesome, right? It means nothing about you. Okay. And the same thing with pricing, where if you are in a business, you are not a nonprofit. The nonprofits, there's so many beautiful ones. But again, go back and listen to another podcast that I did. I forget what number it is, where I talk about the difference between a business and a nonprofit. We cannot have charity if we don't have business. Okay. So therefore, whenever I ask you to pay, to give an exchange, to get coaching, to get mentorship, I'm not doing that because I want to go and get like a private jet or anything like that. I'm literally wearing right now a shirt from the American Red Cross, right? That is not my intention. My intention with having that transaction is because, and trust me on this, even if you don't believe me, just try to trust me, is because when you make that transaction and you put your chips in, you're going to start to be a different person. It is so scary to invest thousands of dollars into something. But guess what? You are going to become a different person whenever you do invest, because you're going to say, wow, like I invested all this and therefore I need to step it up and do whatever I said I was going to do, because this matters to me. Okay. That is owning your belovedness. That is saying, I am worthy of getting support. This does not make me bad. This does not mean that I will end up homeless or on the streets, because I know that it's just money. I can make this money back. God's going to provide for us. Might look a little bit different, but he's going to do it, right? That is what owning your belovedness in business looks like, is saying, I am worth investing in, because you are the best investment that you can possibly make. No degree, no strategy, no technology, none of that stuff is going to be a better investment than investing in yourself. Ask me how I know. Okay. And trust me, I did not used to think like that. But now that I've gone through and invested in myself a lot, and I'm not talking about like degrees, I have those, but I don't necessarily think those were super beneficial for me. I'm talking about making those investments in my own personal growth. Okay. So right now, like owning your belovedness does not mean that you have it perfectly figured out. Clearly, if you forgot that, go back and listen to the beginning of this episode. What it does mean is that your nervous system, your body, is understanding that it is safe, that it is taken care of. It means that you stop waiting to be perfect and that you just press on and know that God's got you, because he loves you. And this doesn't mean to not be prudent, obviously be prudent, but this means that it's okay to believe that he loves you and that he already has a plan for you. Okay. So again, if you have not listened to this song, it's called Belovedness by Sarah Kroger. It's so beautiful, so good. And to sum up this whole episode, like the proving, the hard work, the grind, that negotiation with your own self, like whenever you try to say like, oh, you're not worth it, or like you're too big when you look in the mirror, you're not pretty enough, whatever it is that you're telling yourself, none of those have to do with discipline or strategy in business or anything like that. Those all have to do with you not knowing that you have to own your belovedness. Okay. Own your belovedness, because when you own it, all of those things can start to come into play or fall into place. When you own it, God's going to heal those wounds and kind of go back and forth together. But those wounds are going to be healed, and you're going to say, like, I am worth this. Not because you're doing it from a prideful space, but because you're saying, God loves me and he wants this for me. Okay. And so if any of this landed, I really want you to come join the free Telegram group. It's in the notes, or show notes below. I drop trainings in there that go right after this, like right into this stuff. So if that is what you are interested in, definitely join, and I will see you around next time.